Well, throughout this workshop, we covered a wide variety of information, and now we want to pull it together and set some goals. So coming up with a wellness plan. And so what I'd like you to do is look at each of these categories and to set a goal that fits for you. So not focusing on what's ideal, but focusing on what's real for you. If, nutrition, maybe if you eat 1 vegetable a week, maybe your goal isn't to eat 3 vegetables a day. It might be eating 2 vegetables a week. And so focusing on what's real for you. Sometimes it's helpful if goals are realistic, observable, measurable, and personal, which is ROMP. So sometimes that is helpful for people to have something that's realistic, observable, measurable, and personal. But let's talk a little bit about each one of these, and it's okay to borrow from each other. I mean, hopefully you can get different ideas from each other for goals, but you do want to modify and make it personal for you. So when it comes to sleep and rest, what might be a goal in that area that you could set for yourself?
Well, realistically, I can't say, I'm going to get 8 hours of sleep every night. But if I set a goal to actually start getting ready an hour before I want to be asleep, then I tend to get all my rest that night.
Yeah. So kind of having a sleep routine and doing that earlier. So would a goal be to continue that routine?
Probably, yeah, to make sure that each night I'm at least picking a time that I want to start getting ready.
Yeah. So maybe even giving yourself a bedtime or get ready for bedtime. And for me, a goal would be to do that at 10 o'clock every night, because that works for me, except on Friday and Saturday, right? So,
along with that, I have a tendency to, if I get to bed too late, I will justify it by sleeping in later. So a goal for me would be to fix that by making sure that I wake up at a certain time, as well as go to bed at a certain time.
yeah. So giving yourself a get out of bed time. Yeah. So, and the challenge too with bedtimes is we can't control necessarily all the time that we sleep, but we can control while we're in bed, either if we're not sleeping, practicing relaxing too. So, how about nutrition? We didn't talk much about nutrition so far in the workshop, but when we're stressed out, fight or flight response, our body craves calorie-dense food, so I'll have the instant calories to go fight the lion. And so it makes sense that we crave things that aren't very good for us or healthy in the long run. So we do crave some things that maybe aren't so healthy, and fight or flight kind of wears out our body and affects how we digest food. So we're not getting all the nutrients we need. So the things we crave, we actually need the opposite. I'd say a goal for me would be to have maybe a vegetable a day. So that's a realistic goal for me. What are some realistic goals for you?
I'm really bad about getting vegetables sometimes, or fruits. So what I've been trying to do is make sure that I buy some fruits and some vegetables when I go to the store, and then put them where I can see them in my apartment, so that I remember that I have them and I'll eat them then maybe every day.
Yeah. So a goal is to make sure that daily you have access to fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
That you have
that
access
makes it
to.
more likely that I'll actually eat them.
Yeah.
I think having an actual breakfast is a good goal for me. So most of the time I'll just grab a piece of toast or something on my way out the door, and that's just not enough for me to get to lunch. So I think doing a better job of that.
So having breakfast.
I was going to go along with that, making sure that I have that breakfast, and also making sure that my meals aren't too spaced out, because sometimes I can push my lunch from, I don't want to eat lunch at noon, I want to eat it at 3, and that makes a much longer gap. So just making sure that I'm keeping my meals more evenly set.
Yeah. So spreading that out and making sure that you're getting consistent calories throughout the day. Yeah. So.
I find that I feel a lot better when I drink water, but that I sometimes forget. So carrying a water bottle with me and drinking it regularly and refilling it just makes me feel better.
Yeah. A lot of times we might be dehydrated and we don't realize it. So having enough water. Having enough water and having fruits and vegetables are common things that college students need to work on. Another thing with nutrition is if you have a tendency to be anxious already, you might want to be a little careful about how much caffeine you add to your diet too, because that's a stimulant. And if you're already have a tendency to be kind of wired a little bit naturally, you want to be careful about some of those things. So Now, what about physical activity? So some goals, we talked about the value of exercise and physical activity. What would be some goals in this area?
I think 3 times a week doing some sort of workout is a realistic goal for me. I think I can do that.
And so for some people, scheduling physical activity really works, maybe taking a class, maybe noticing if you like to do those things alone or with other people. For other people, it might be just being, taking the stairs instead of an elevator and finding other ways to add more exercise. Other maybe physical activity goals?
Maybe trying to go play racquetball with someone once a week, as well as going to do Irish dance once a week.
Okay, yeah. So playing around with different ways to get more physical activity in your life. Of course, with anything, if you do too much, the goal might be to do less. If you're really stressed out because you're not exercising at least an hour a day, that may be a little bit too much, and so thinking about that a little bit too. So, interpersonal relationships. So thinking about goals related to your relationships or your support system. So a goal specifically to develop your support system, or maybe repair a relationship that's stressing you out, or some sort of goal with that. An example for me might be to call one person a week, since I call a friend or a family member about once every 2 months. So maybe trying to do once a week would be good.
I think a goal for me is to make sure that in most of my relationships that I'm playing the opposite role to being the listener, being the friend that they can go to and that sort of thing, just to make sure that there's enough give and take in that relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a goal seems like being aware of your role and having reciprocity
Making
in that.
sure I'm listening, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone want to share another goal?
In my family relationships, I sometimes my relationship with my wife or my kids just gets lost. And so I find that I need to section off parts of my week to always make time, date nights with my wife, one-on-ones with my kids, family time, and that those things are kind of inviolable as a general rule.
Yeah.
And that if I bake those into my schedule and know that I can't change them, then I have to figure the rest out, but I don't neglect some of the most important things for
Yeah.
me.
So a goal to continue making time for those relationships a priority and scheduling that. And so with students, we often put things in our schedule, but we forget to put our relationships and ourself in the schedule. And so continuing to include that. Goals with school or work. And if you're not in school or working, maybe a personal growth goal like reading a book once a month. But thinking about a work goal for me would be to get my paperwork done at night before I leave, so I don't have to think about it. So what might be a school or work goal?
Allow time for myself to study. I know that there's sometimes that I'll justify those interpersonal relationships and have those take precedence over my school or work. But I have a difficult time going ahead and taking the time to study. So setting a specific schedule for that, perhaps.
Yeah, so really trying to work on that balance piece. So we do want to value time for relationships and self-care and spend time for our goals and really carve out that time. So would that be maybe 2 hours a day, 4 hours a day? What would be a good goal?
Probably 2 to 3 hours a day at least.
Okay, yeah. So a lot of times they say for every credit or unit you take in college, you should study for 3 hours. And that's why 12 credits or units are full-time, because you should be studying for 36 hours. And a lot of people don't put all that in their schedule, right? Yeah. Okay. Stress management or relaxation goals. So we've been practicing a variety of techniques. I think a goal for me might be doing PMR at night before I go to sleep, but think about a goal related to stress management and relaxation.
I think to try to do some sort of breathing once a day, I think it's something I can do, even if it's for a short period of time.
Okay, so practice some type of breathing exercise once a day. Okay.
For me personally, like being inside a building all day can really wear me down. So I think going outside and at least allowing a couple of breaths to be outside, walk around a little, even in the wintertime can be really refreshing. So.
Yeah.
That's definitely a goal of mine.
Yeah, so making sure to get yourself outside at least once a day. Yeah. Okay.
Like I said in a previous one, that I love to play the piano. There's not a piano in my nearby area, so maybe finding a place I can go to play the piano at least once a week would be really nice for me.
So finding that place to have that outlet.
Yeah.
Okay. So goals with thoughts. We covered a lot of information with thoughts. So thinking about thoughts and some of that information, what might be something to work on a little bit? So a goal when it comes to thoughts.
One goal that I think I've made throughout this process is to allow myself some time to have time to think, you know, just go somewhere private, go somewhere where I don't have to worry about school or work or any of these other things, but have time to specifically think and think through where I am and how I need to adjust things.
Yeah. Okay. So if it was a goal to give yourself time to think, would an hour a week, an hour a day, what would be something to aim for?
I'd say probably 30 minutes a day at least, because I just maybe take a little walk or go somewhere and just think.
Yeah. So aiming for 30 minutes a day. Yeah. Other thought goals?
Sometimes I tend to just think about all the stuff that went wrong maybe at the end of the day, so to try to pay attention to things that I liked as I think about, you know, what I've done, or think about positive things too.
So kind of see the bigger picture when you reflect on your day and think about some of those pieces, you know, maybe thinking about things that you're grateful for. You know, sometimes that's a nice exercise on, you know, Sunday nights to think about 3 things you're grateful for each week. You know, so. How about emotion goals? So we covered a variety of things when it comes to emotions. What might be an emotion goal?
I find that whenever I act based on strong emotions, I often regret it. And so trying to build a bit of a distance or a space between some of my stronger emotions and my actions. If I'm angry at someone and start an email, maybe sleep on it before I send the email. Before I, you know, get upset at my child for something they did, take a step back, breathe, before I react.
Yeah.
Usually I can avoid making some damaging decisions.
So the goal of noticing when your emotions are really intense and then pausing and creating space so you can make a choice. And so you can use the intense emotions as a signal to practice pausing and taking a break. So I don't want to react or behave until I can get the emotion to here. I still might want to feel the emotions, but I might want to wait until I get them at a level where they're not controlling my behavior.
I think I would want to just notice what causes my emotions sometimes to, I don't know, I guess be more emotional, because I do get more emotional when I'm stressed out, or I might be more snappy if I'm really hungry or if I'm really tired. So maybe noticing those things that cause my emotions to get out of hand or anything like that, just so I can keep an eye on them.
Yeah, so using your emotions as a signal to maybe see what your interpretations are, also to be able to just notice them and label them more.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
be able to stop myself and say, okay, you're not really angry, just, you know, go eat something, you're hungry, or
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
tired.
Yeah. And then behaviors. What might be a behavioral goal?
Well, kind of like we mentioned earlier, when I feel like I don't want to do something, but I know it's on top of my priority list and I do need to get it done, and this is the time frame, not waiting for that motivation, but jumping into it before that motivation, because sometimes that can even spur greater motivation to do it. So.
Yeah, yeah. So the goal of doing it anyway. So sometimes we need to push ourselves. I mean, sometimes they say fake it till you make it, but part of it is, if this is something I want to do because it's consistent with the woman I want to be, just do it. Don't think about the Nike slogan, just do it. So that would be one example. Now, social and spiritual enhancement. Some people like to set goals related to spirit-related, maybe reading scripture for 20 minutes a day. Some people like to maybe go for a hike because they feel that being in the mountains is a way to connect with their spirit. Other people in this area might not want to focus on the spiritual enhancement, and they want to focus on social enhancement. And social enhancement would be something that you do to contribute to society. And so whether that's recycling or volunteering, or so having a goal related to your connection and impact on society. So if you think about this for a minute, what would be maybe a goal?
Since I've been moving a lot for school, I think like I always end up with stuff that I'm giving away, and so not just chucking it, but giving it to like Goodwill or doing something to contribute rather than being kind of mindless about what I'm doing.
So thinking, about different goals in this area. And then the last one, to complete our kind of wellness plan is a goal related to creative personal expression. So in this area, it's thinking of a goal, something that you do to express yourself. And so whether that is playing piano or remodeling a car or journaling or writing poetry or figuring out something that you do that expresses you. So what might be a goal in that area? So you had said earlier about maybe finding a place to play the piano. So that would be a goal related to this area.
I like to write. I think writing helps me get out my emotions and frustrations, and I like to feel creative in my writing.
Yeah. So making sure that you have time for that. So I hope that you will all take time to set some goals and then review them every once in a while, maybe even setting goals for a week, review them and reset them and recommit them. Unfortunately, a lot of times people set goals like around New Year's resolutions, and then after 3 weeks, that's it. So maybe having monthly resolutions or weekly resolutions and recommit to taking better care of yourself. So thank you.